Some sad news in the world of professional wrestling tonight. WWE star Wyndham Lawrence Rotunda, known as Bray Wyatt, passed away unexpectedly today. The news was announced by WWE Chief Content Officer Triple H on X, formerly known as Twitter. Rotunda was born in Brooksville and went to Hernando High School. He was also born into a wrestling family. His dad is Mike Rotunda and his granddad is Black Jack Mulligan. We don't know the exact cause of death yet, but we do know he's survived by a wife and 4 children. Rotunda was just 36 years old.
This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. I have to be very careful how I word things in this video for obvious reasons, but we live in a society today where they've actually convinced the masses that it's normal for people in their 30s to drop dead. And this, of course, is the new normal. Sudden adult death syndrome, adults dying of heart attacks in their 30s. People have become indoctrinated through the media to think that this type of stuff is normal. Now, I've covered the WWF, WWE for many years, not so much recently. And I've run into my problems, of course, covering the WWF because the audience that follows the WWF or WWE is very, very emotionally tied to the characters and the people in the WWE. It's very weird. It's a lot different than what we see with the Hollywood idolatry that goes on. It's almost like the fans of the WWE think that their characters are actually real people, unlike in movies where you see a guy play a character, but then he presents himself as himself in society. The wrestlers present themselves as these characters in society. So there's a strong bond between the audience there. And of course, that means there's always a lot of flagging going on when I cover those types of videos, even though I'm a new YouTuber. Now, some of you might remember Bray Wyatt in the past. I've covered him specifically because of his character and the tie-ins to the occult, the tie-ins to all the satanic imagery. Now, again, I'm not doing this video for any other reason than to show you the obvious, right? Because it's very easy to connect the dots, even though people out there don't want to connect the dots and refuse to connect the dots. In fact, this theory is already going viral about what could have caused this professional wrestler's death. Of course, the WWE, most people know that that company is completely surrounded by mysterious deaths. There have been so many people that have died who have been sacrifices in that company over the years that it's so obvious that these people just can't be dying the way that they're dying in their 30s and 40s. And Vince McMahon going from pretty much poverty in the late 90s to being a billionaire and rubbing shoulders with people like Donald Trump and all the elites out there. But anyway, let's look at the WWE and Bray Wyatt. Now, Bray Wyatt, the cause of death that they've come out with here is due to undisclosed medical reasons. But recently, the information's been released that he got really sick with something a few months ago. I can't imagine what it would be. Now, you might say, well, he got sick with that. Well, anytime you hear that somebody gets sick with a certain something, you know exactly what that's related to. Now, no company out there that I remember seeing as far as, media companies in regards to other than, CNN and MSNBC and those types of propaganda outlets, but no other company, like if you're looking at the WWE, as if it was the NFL or the MLB or some sports organization, even though it's entertainment, pushed this specific thing onto people more than they did. They did PSAs targeting teenagers and kids out there to make sure that they went and did a certain something to themselves. And they fired a lot of their wrestlers who refused to do a certain something to themselves. So we can connect the dots there and realize that this guy is very, very likely one of the people who was forced into getting it, whether he wanted to or not, if he wanted to have a job and be a part of this company, because that's what they openly were telling us at the time. Articles were coming out. We all remember how many people lost their jobs because they refused something. Well, it was no different in the WWE. Now, another thing to look at with the WWE is the COO. Most people have heard of this guy, Triple H, who I've covered before, of course, calls himself the King of Kings, even though there's only one King of Kings, and that's Jesus Christ. But these people obviously always are mocking God. They're always promoting Satan. The WWE is probably the most polluted form of television out there, targeted towards children, that promotes the devil over and over again and mocks God with things like the King of Kings. But Triple H had a cardiac arrest back in 2021 where he almost died from a cardiac event. And I wonder what could have caused that. But you see how normal this is becoming with generic heart issues? That people are just, this is happening to them and nobody's connecting the dots as to why. And they don't want to connect the dots because they've probably done it to themselves and they don't want to believe it. But people like me and you, we're not doing this stuff to call people out there stupid. We're doing this to help people and lead them in the right direction. But they don't want to see that because they want to trust in Big Brother. And they don't realize that Big Brother does not have their best intentions at heart. In fact, Big Brother has told us on the record that they want to kill off the population. So connecting the dots is very, very easy when you have common sense. So Bray Wyatt, also known as the Fiend in the WWE, I covered this stuff. He's summoned demons before in the WWE, done rituals, satanic rituals. You can see some of the pictures on the screen where they were popping up, doing subcuts. And that video's on my website about subliminal cuts, where they just pop in like imagery on the screen while they're talking and cut it away in under a second. It's subliminal. It's called subcuts. It's a subliminal mind control, where they would show him and they put up satanic pentagrams while he's talking and nobody's suspicious about it. They're like, oh, it's just entertainment. Of course, he had a female with him, I think, who was doing rituals inside of satanic pentagrams. They were doing stuff on the television where they were coming out of giant cubes, right? Saturn worship, giant cube boxes with pentagrams all over it. So, of course, there's ties into the occult. He posts all sorts of satanic imagery on there. I'm not saying the guy's a Satanist or not. I don't really know. But I can obviously see through the characters and through the things that he does, because no Christian would obviously promote this stuff, whether it's an act or not, unless they're really, really lukewarm. Especially when you're doing this stuff towards children. The main audience for the WWE is obviously teenagers and young adults, and the young adults are obviously still pretty much acting like toddlers because, you know, if you look at a lot of the people who are fans of this, and I'm not saying if you've ever been a fan that you are one, because I think we all grew up and seen wrestling on the TV with guys like Hulk Hogan and all that, but a lot of the people now who are fans are still, you know, just like the Disney cult, are tied into the WWE cult. They still act like giant children in their 40s and 30s, and they want, you know, to believe that these people are wonderful people, even though they know nothing about the people in real life. They are all about the idolatry and the worship. So the WWE, again, was promoting this heavily. They had TSAs all over their website, of course, geared towards their audience, where they were telling us that we need to get back to normal and the way we live. These are all important things. So they were beating this into their audience's head. And this is one of the reasons we all ran into the problem we ran into, is that these celebrities and these people who had fame and influence over society were promoting this. Thus, their audience was regurgitating what they were saying, and then they've created this wall of people who actually defend this stuff. So if we look at the history of the WWE, by the way, again, there's always characters like The Undertaker and Kane, based on Cain and Abel. And you have guys like Batista, right? He's got the pyramid right on his chest. Nobody's suspicious. He's hanging out with James Gunn, I believe his name is, who's obviously tied to very disturbing acts, which I've covered in the past, which of course have been scrubbed off the net. You have Aleister Black, who has the seal of Satan right on his rear end. This guy wrestles and obviously just promotes Baphomet. He promotes Crowley. His name's Aleister. I mean, where do you think the name is from? People don't realize that. And it's the seal of Satan on his rear end, the sigil of Lucifer. You know, and this is another guy who actually got my channel removed at one point. He was doing a live stream where he mentioned it because I was calling out all the symbols that are tattooed all over his body, and he was trying to convince his audience that he wasn't into the occult and all that stuff. So he even said in a live stream that he went to the WWE to try to get me thrown off of the internet. But hey, that's a different YouTuber, so who knows who that guy is, but I think you all get the point. Anyway, moving on. We have Seth Rollins, who's another guy. These are all like, you know, big guys in the company. These aren't just little guys that have come through and gone out. Maybe Aleister Black is a little guy because I think his career, his 15 minutes ended at about 2 minutes, his fame. But Seth Rollins is a big guy there, and he always has the satanic imagery all over him, the pentagrams, the Baphomet. And again, kids are seeing this stuff. John Cena throwing up the 666 sign all the time. Other guys wearing shirts about witchcraft and black magic. Yeah, Brock Lesnar, the Beast, known as the Beast. You even see some of the screenshots where he's coming out with the upside-down Baphomet pentagram on the screen. So none of these things are a coincidence. We've seen in the past, of course, characters like The Undertaker doing ritual sacrifice on television. So the WWE is obviously tied in deeply into this stuff. And again, the mysterious deaths that have happened over the years. So when something like this happens with a guy like Bray Wyatt, they don't want you to ask questions. They don't want you to point a finger and say, well, what could have caused this? So now what they do is they come out and they tell you that it's complications from a certain something. Oh, complications because they were diagnosed with a certain something, right? And this will obviously push into the fall push for people to go out there and get, ramp back up, get boosted back up, right? That's what it's going to lead towards. because that's how this all works. So people out there are going to be fearful. Oh, that could happen to me. And they don't realize what's actually happening to these people. They actually think that all these young adults are dying from, contracting something when they don't realize that they're contracting it from inserting it in themselves. Okay? They don't get how any of this stuff actually works. They just immediately disregard it. People don't realize when you put certain something in your body, it's actually in the certain something. The actual disease is in there. They tell you that the disease is in there because it's supposed to build up your, immune system and fight off the potential of it, getting it, contracting it, right? So you're putting it in you, and then they're telling you that you're not immune. And these people still line up and do it, right? So one can obviously just use common sense here and see, here you go. You could take the stuff away if you want. If the guy, he's got, doing the pentagram and doing all the satanic stuff. And you could say, he's a good guy and all that stuff. Fine. You could say all that stuff that you want to say, but 35-year-olds don't drop dead from heart complications. And it's not like this is just one rare case where you're like, a 35-year-old, dropped dead from this. He had an enlarged heart. Maybe he was doing drugs and all this other stuff. The guy dropped dead at 36 years old, and many other people in their 30s are as well. Triple H, like I showed you earlier, just happened to have a heart thing at the same exact time all this other stuff was going on. Right? Oh, it must all be a coincidence when they're telling you that you have to get a certain something or you're going to be released from the company, right? Because people were getting fired for not doing it. There's a long list. If you look up some of the articles, I'm trying to show some on the screen, but I know I can't because the algorithm, but a lot of the articles out there were talking about how people were getting fired, how they're telling you, hey, you got to get it or you're out. And who are they promoting it towards? Their youthful audience, their young millennials, telling them to go get it, and they listen to what they say, right? Then they tell them, well, you can't come to the events unless you got it. That's how a lot of this stuff started in the beginning. Oh, you couldn't go to the concert unless you got it, or you had to go get multiple graphene swabs up your nose tests. Oh, or you can't come, and they wanted to go to see their WrestleManias and all this other stuff, so they went and did it. Just like I covered with all those bands that were having concerts, right? They're like, you can't come see our concert unless you go and get it. Right? And who are the bands? Oh, the Foo Fighters, a band that's connected to a direct ritual sacrifice that occurred. Some guy ended up getting famous, even though he has no talent, after he whacked the guy who was the head of the band. Nobody connects it. And then, of course, they do movies about the Foo Fighters, about Satan and 666, and they're telling you that you got to go and do this. Does anybody see who the people are who are promoting this and then look into the roots of these people? Now, I'm not saying that this wrestler was promoting it, because he wasn't promoting it, but the company he worked for was telling you that you had to have it. And this guy's obviously deep-rooted, at least his character is, in the occult. So this guy knows what he's talking about, knows what he's doing. He's very aware. They're not just like, he isn't showing up for work and his spandex getting oiled up going, hey, what's going on today? They're like, hey, you're going to do all this stuff with the devil and pentagrams. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's okay. And doesn't know what it is. Or doesn't even, at the very least, research and see what it is, and then maybe have a conscience and say, hey, I'm not going to promote this stuff towards kids, right? And people out there are like, well, it's just a show. It's just a show. Well, it's not just a show. Nothing's just a show anymore. When the audiences out there are so influenced by these people, by the characters that they see on TV, by the actors and the wrestlers themselves, they're fully influenced. These people could tell them to jump off a cliff and they would. And they're like, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, you would. Because narcissists don't realize when they're influenced by people, because they're narcissists. So they come out and they go, I do not care. And you're like, well, why are you dressing like that? Why are you doing that? Why are you talking like that? They're like, because I'm being me. And they don't realize the psychosis they're in. Oh, you're being you, as opposed to who? You're being someone else? Well, you really are being someone else, because everything you're doing is based off of influence and mind control and propaganda. Everything you're regurgitating is stuff you're regurgitating from the mainstream media who wants you dead. So people like me and you, the listener of this channel, try to constantly wake these people up. It's a very dumbed down audience. The WWE is a very dumbed down audience. I hate the stereotype, but let's be real. You look at the crowd, and I'm not saying every single person, right? Because I'm sure a lot of you out there probably have watched wrestling or casually watch. I'm talking about like the diehard. You see these people. They'll be at these events crying tears when they, do some tribute to this wrestler, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with caring about somebody not wanting to see somebody perish, because I do this to try to help people so they don't perish eternally, so that they find God and realize what is going on in this deception of a world that we live in. But they worship these people. So when these people come out and they tell them they got to do this, they got to do that, they got to get that, and then they show satanic symbols and all this stuff, they don't connect the dots for whatever reason. And I guess the reason is just that the mind control is so thick. So it's becoming more and more common that we're seeing guys in their 30s croak. You know, I covered Jamie Foxx. We all saw the stuff with Jamie Foxx and the cloning of Jamie Foxx. And people are like, that's insane, you know? So I try to show stuff like I did in the videos on Jamie Foxx where the government's actually openly, Bill Clinton's talking about the capability of cloning in the 90s. Oh, we can clone, we can do this, so we have to have ethics involved in cloning, as if there's any ethics involved in cloning, right? And they talked about cloning babies in the 90s and things like that, which means that they've been doing it since the 60s probably. And these people still don't believe it because they're like, why would they clone so-and-so? Why would they do that? Why would they clone Jamie Foxx? Well, I don't know. They built up all this stock in him as an influencer. Why would they want these people to croak when they know that these people could be influencers for them, peddling all their, you know, not just misinformation, but peddling all the agendas that they want people to follow along with? So if a guy actually gets really ill from something he puts in his body, well, they can just roll out another one. Kind of like with the president, who doesn't even look like the same guy, right? But anyway, back to the topic at hand here. You got a wrestler in his 30s dying. People should be waking up to it. When the diagnosis comes out that it was effects from a certain virus that he got, then you should realize, well, how did he get the virus? Oh, well, everybody's getting the virus by taking the virus itself, right? Because that's how it works. And then people were like, well, I didn't take it and I got it. Well, that's this thing that can shed upon people like a snake sheds its skin. This is common science. This is stuff they've taught us throughout history. All one has to do is go look at what happened with this thing called polio when they told everybody to go and take a certain something. And then what happened with polio? Oh, people who had polio, people who took something to prevent polio were actually getting polio and then shedding polio onto other people. So they had to stop it from happening. That's basic science. That's what occurs. You can look it up and research it, but they don't want to because they're already got sucked into this. And then on top of that, they go, well, you know, they've told us that you can't shed from this specific one. Oh, right. And we should listen to these people. Why? When we hear stories about how there's weed killer in our food and all sorts of chemicals in our water that people detect. And these are the people that approve these products and approve these things for us. And then they come out and they flat out tell us that we need to, you know, skim down the population, right? I got to go be careful and cover this more over on my website, uprisingrevival.com. But I wanted to just cover the topic because it's on everybody's mind. At least people are messaging me about it. You know, it's being covered by the mainstream media. It's being covered by, sporting outlets out there. Apparently wrestling's a sport now, whatever. I thought sports had to be like real competition, not scripted, but sure. Okay. So they're covering this and they're telling you all these things and people are just like, they're being sympathetic and not saying, well, what's the elephant in the room here? What's the bizarre thing here? How does this happen to somebody who's pretty healthy? I mean, wrestlers are in tremendous shape. These guys have to have really good cardio skills to be able to do that, whatever your take is on the reality of it or not. And obviously, you know, they take a beating doing all that stuff. You can't fake fall, right? So these guys have to be in really good condition, right? And how many of these guys die so young? And you'd be like, well, that's because they take juice and those types of things. Well, this guy wasn't on juice. He was a big husky guy, but he wasn't, you know. These types of things are not normal to be occurring, okay? They're not normal. How many athletes have I covered over on the website or other people have covered, if you've heard of, who are just getting ill or people in really good shape or just dropping from adult sudden death syndrome? And still, nobody wants to believe it. Why? Well, because they don't want to. They don't want to believe that the actual boogeyman is right in front of their face. They want to just believe that it's whatever the government tells them the boogeyman is. And the reality is that these people this is a strategic, obviously, operation. I've been talking about it since before it even happened. Many of us have, because this has been in their blueprint for decades. And now it's actually happening. And people don't want to see it or believe it because the mind control is too thick. So another wrestler in their 30s passes. Another athlete in their 30s passes. Nobody asked questions. The same company was promoting something very heavily the last couple of years, even putting out public service announcements to its audience, making them, influencing them to go and do it, telling them to come to their events. They had to have it. And nobody asked the question about why this could happen. They just want to mourn and put out public statements. I mean, I've talked about this before I wrap up here. You go on Twitter, it's trending on Twitter, you click on it, right? If anybody out there does that, you go over Twitter, like there's a trending section, and you click on the guy's name. And all the things that pop up are people putting out statements like they know the guy. Like, my prayers and condolences go to his family. All right, that drives me insane because I'm just like, who are you? Like, what are you making the statements so your friends see that you're putting out this publicist statement like you know the person, like you're a brand or a corporation, right? They act like that because this is how the mind control works. And then the other thing that drives me nuts is all these people out there, they're like, well, he's in heaven now. And they put these memes up or whatever of him in heaven with other wrestlers. And it's like, yeah, did you guys ever get the memo? You don't believe in God or the devil, but you believe in heaven, right? And now these people actually believe that you just go to heaven if you're a nice person, or if you're a fan of that person, they go to heaven. I have a news flash for everybody out there who's just stumbling upon this video. There's only one way to get to heaven. That's through salvation in Jesus Christ. That's it. So the whole the whole ridiculousness of these people being atheists and then believing heaven and then saying this stuff like he's in heaven, just shows you how dumb they all are, right? Because they're taking something from the Bible, but they don't believe in the Bible. Right? Because heaven is it's from the Bible, heaven and hell. And the only way to get there isn't by holding a door for somebody or saying nice things about someone. It's through Jesus Christ. That's it. The rest of you, you're going to be perishing for eternity in hell. So you better get saved and find Jesus Christ. So Satanism running rampant in the WWE, just another person from the WWE. It seems like every couple of months or year. I've covered so many over the years, right? There's like Owen Hart falling. From the rafters, he was up there. You had Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit. I mean, all these guys. It's just filled with so many people dying young, and then they just blame it on other stuff. I think Vince McMahon's got his hand in a lot of it, to be honest with you. But this story, I think we all know what really had its hands in playing a role. So I thank everybody for being here. I hope people will wake up to what's going on. But unfortunately, I think this will just lead to more people lining up to take it instead of realizing what's doing it. Thanks, everybody, again. God bless all of you and your families.